For anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Reverend Edward Trout. My pronouns are he, him. I am very passionate about empowering and uplifting others. I'm also very passionate about creativity and the arts. I'm an ordained interfaith minister through One Spirit Seminary out of New York, and it's my pleasure to be here today. So I did write that song, and I love how with the Daily Word we went from like the flowing of water to the burning and ashes and the rebirth of the phoenix. I actually wrote that song 15 years ago. It doesn't seem that long now. I wrote it after my sister made her transition. My sister Pam, some of you know or knew, Michael, Lynn, Deanna, Big D. Rita worked with her at RCI. So she had a brain tumor and maintained for a few years, but it eventually is what made her transition from this life. There were 3 songs that I wrote actually during that period specific to that experience. The first one after the diagnosis was I Trust That All Is Well. And then right around the time that she made her transition, I wrote the song Call Me Home, which is Call Me Home to Heaven in Your Heart. And then after, it was this song. The phoenix was very important to my sister as a symbol. She loved that symbology of the death, the burning, the rebirth from the ashes. In fact, so much that it was decided there should be a phoenix symbol on her headstone, and which was done by committee, of course. Everybody sending in ideas to me. I was the one that rendered it. But I actually do have an image. James, if you want to move on to that, there's a picture of that headstone with the phoenix that was designed. There are 3 little hearts in the tail for the 3 siblings that she had. Still has. So there have been so many people in my life and in our lives that have transitioned in the last 15 years, so many losses. There's a phrase that I unfortunately just picked up recently. We were watching a celebration of life for Bob Allen. Most of you don't know Bob Allen, but you've heard his wife's work. In fact, his wife, Melinda Wood Allen, we sang her song earlier today, I Give My Thanks to God. She's a dear musician friend. They live in Texas, so we didn't get to go in person. But we watched remotely, and Reverend Michael Gott was leading the service, and he had a phrase that he had gotten from elsewhere that when we think of our deceased, to remember that they haven't gone anywhere. They've gone everywhere. And boy, did that land with me. It struck me too, recently our own Wendell Fowler had a post shared by the universe, so who knows. But it was, the quote was just a gentle reminder that the darkest part of your story gave birth to the strongest part of your soul. Embrace all of it. Amen. So for today's talk, I have a lot of sources. I touched on the Daily Word a little bit, but actually the Daily Word I'm going to focus more on is in a couple of weeks from June 1st, when we will be in Unity Village. But that one will come up. Also, Ken Daigle's book, Unapologetic Manifestation, which I know Terry's familiar with. Where'd Terry go? There you are, back there. And I'm not going to use a lot of it, but I am going to touch on it. We are probably doing a book study of that this summer. I think that is the intention. Eric Butterworth's book, Living in the Flow. There was also an article that I read from last summer called The Power of Positive Thinking, Why We Need New Thought Now. There was also an interview that I was listening to with Vincent Tolman, otherwise known as Vinnie Tolman, who's author of Light After Death, and of course, just my own experiences. So all of that into one giant melange of today's talk. So today's Daily Word, when I had looked at it pretty much right after my last talk, I had to laugh out loud because my last talk was You Are the Fountain of Life, and it was all about flow, and today's Daily Word is flow. It's like, I don't intend to do a part 2. I don't want to just extend that talk, but I do want to touch on it. So as I said, more importantly to me for today's talk is the Daily Word from June 1st. The word is resilience. The affirmation is living my faith, I persevere and build resilience. And it says, and this is in part, I didn't quote the whole thing, anyone who has run a long-distance race knows the importance of steady pacing. And the focus is not on the medal at the end, but on this breath, this stride, this moment. Today I celebrate not only my triumphs, but also my simple steps of perseverance. With every breath and every forward stride, I am renewed and guided onward. The scripture for that day is from 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. So that's really from the song that Michael just sang, From the Ashes, that as I walk through the valley in the darkest of times, right? And it seems those I love are gone, but they're not gone. It seems they are. Again, they've not gone anywhere. They've gone everywhere. So how do we, as the human parts of our spiritual beings, how do we deal with all of our losses, all of our setbacks, all of our grief? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with your loss, your grief? That's a question. That is a real question. Yes, it is. Excellent. Yeah, allowing the emotions to come through, right? Allow the tears when they come up, because they will come up at the most unexpected times. I've had so many friends and loved ones that will apologize when they start crying. I'm like, don't apologize. Let that out. How else do you deal with it? Comfort foods. Indeed, for ourselves and for others, right? Yeah. What else? Nature, walk in the woods. That's a beautiful way to reground oneself. And praying. Yeah. Huge on prayer. Yes, Crystal. Yeah, happy memories. Absolutely, because those memories, as long as you hold those memories, that person is still there. Maybe not physically, the way that we want them, but they're still there. And step one really is that whole aspect of when you feel it, embrace it. You know, we sang that earlier. We feel these negative things and we think, oh, I've got to get rid of that as soon as I can. But when you do that, you're not processing it. You're avoiding it. Embracing it means to process it. Let it work through you. And then again, the same with the good things. You can't hold on to the good things. You need to radiate them. So that's how we keep part of our focus on that steady pace, on that next step, on the now moment. Because the way that we view those things, the way we view our losses, the way we view our lives is everything. Most in the room are familiar with unity principle number 3. Our thoughts create the reality that we live, right? Those inner thoughts have a direct influence on our perception of the outer world. So whatever you are thinking about it, you're creating for yourself. What we believe, what we think, all shapes our experience. Here's another saying that most are familiar with. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. The thing that you cling to is going to keep in there, right? So if you're viewing this as, I'm keeping a steady pace, that's how you will see it. If you see it as, I'm at a loss and I'm broken down, that's how you're going to see it. And I don't remember where this phrase came from. I'm sure others in the room will tell me or remind me. But the idea that how you do anything, how you're approaching any of that, how you do anything is how you do everything. Right? We are spiritual beings, and so the way that we train our minds to look at things, that becomes how we do everything. And as we all know, we can talk about this until we're blue in the face. You know, we can have all these spiritual tools, and that's great. We love them. If you don't apply them, they do nothing. Unity principle number 5, we have to live. We have to put forward in action the things that we know. Just curious, I want to know whose company I'm in. The people that over-intellectualize, over-analyze, get stuck in analysis, want to process intellectually rather than feel the emotion. Okay, you're my people, right? This is, no, that's something I had to overcome in seminary. And it was funny that first year of seminary, and we're going over all these ways that we will protect ourselves, right? All of our defense mechanisms. And some of them included things like numbing, right? Oh, if you're doom scrolling, that's a form of numbing. Same thing if you're using substances, it's a form of numbing. But one of the defenses was intellectualization. And it's described as, rather than experience the thing, you view the thing and you analyze it and you go, oh, I understand it. And I was like, oh God, that's me. I'll read a self-help book and I will look at all of the exercises and go, oh, I get it. Do I do them? Well, now I do. But at that point, this was, 6 years ago? At that point, I wasn't. I was understanding them because that keeps my heart safer. It keeps me protected. But we're not meant to be protected like that. If we're avoiding the emotions, if we're not processing them, the good and the bad, we're missing the actual experience of life. So when we are experiencing good emotions, it's easy. When calamity strikes, it gets so much harder. When we are at odds with our loved ones, when we are at war, when we feel defeated, it is hard to allow those things in and process them. We want to avoid them. But we have to walk through that valley. And in order to love, you have to risk the loss. I've said so many times about grief over the years, grief is just the price we pay for love. There is no way out of the relationship without us losing each other somehow physically, right? Best case scenario, we both die at the same time, great. Physically, our bodies have still lost each other. There is no way when you love someone that you won't find a separation. And the grief is the price we pay. And it is so worth it. But if you don't process it, you get stuck in it. The idea, though, of walking through the valley also brings up the question of, like, in order to understand loss, I really have to have known love and vice versa. So in order to understand good, do we have to have experienced evil? Without seeing the darkness of the world, are we really making a choice to be good? And isn't choice what this is all about? We choose who we want to express to the world, who we need to be to the world. It's my perception, again, becomes my reality. Am I a victor or the victim? Am I creative or am I just empty? Am I healing or am I getting sicker? How do I see myself? Whenever I'm feeling less than 100%, I always prefer to think I am healing, because that is the process my body will naturally move toward, right? Am I prospering or am I lacking in whatever means? In Ken Daigle's book, Unapologetic Manifestation, has anybody besides Terry and me looked into that book? Just curious. Okay. So Ken Daigle, and I've known Ken Daigle remotely through Zoom meetings and other things from Unity, but I didn't know his story. So he, in his introduction, talks about a basic background of himself. As a young man, he went to New York to become a performer, as so many do. And he contracted HIV. He also, in many ways, acknowledges that looking at his younger self, he was doing self-sabotage because of his own ideas of unworthiness. And on the really positive side of his experience, he had some great spiritual teachers and tools. Louise Hay, the book You Can Heal Your Life, right? Really good. He also got to study A Course in Miracles, led by Marianne Williamson. And he got to go to Unity in New York, led by Eric Butterworth. So he had these great spiritual teachers, right? And in the early part of the book, he said something that, again, hit me so squarely. He was talking about how the universe, we manifest. We manifest all the time. Often we're doing it unconsciously. But he said the universe is not magic in that regard. A lot of people think of it like that genie, and it's just this magic thing. He said it's not that. And he equated it to more like Cinderella's fairy godmother, which, believe me, my analytics, I said, that's magic. But his point was, what the fairy godmother did was take all of the things that Cinderella already had and helped her see them differently. Oh, a pumpkin can be a carriage. Oh, mice can be horses, right? It was things she already had with her. All it took was a change of viewing them. A change in perception is the miracle we need. So, as I said, manifestation is always happening. When we are unaware, it happens from our unexamined fears. It happens from the subconscious programming that runs in the back of our minds. Anybody that's ever had a computer that starts getting things running in the background, you know how it bogs it down, sometimes completely cripples it. That's the programming that runs in the back of our subconscious. So if we don't consciously take control of what we're manifesting, that's what comes out. So instead, we want to look at things from a very conscious, a very choice-forward way. And emotions are important. Emotions are very important in how we interact with the world and how we show up and how we see our manifestations. Relying on our neuroplasticity, right? Our brains have this neuroplasticity and we can adapt, but we have to work to make the adaptation happen. And especially around things of hope, right? That optimistic view, whether that's about hope about prosperity, about health, about the state of the world. I mentioned an article that I'm going to be reading from. Michael Corthell was the author, and the site I found it on is New Thought, New World. But he writes about how the benefits of hope are not just spiritual. And we've discussed this before. There are numerous studies that show that optimism is beneficial. You have better health when you are optimistic. You find better outcomes when you're optimistic. We suffer less depression. Not none, but less. All of those things, like if you are optimistic, it doesn't mean, oh, my life is going to be completely smooth sailing. It means it will be improved over what it would have been otherwise. And isn't that our goal? To improve ourselves. So hope helps turn this crucial component of well-being on in us, right? And New Thought in general, any New Thought center, any New Thought approach is about fostering that mindset of possibility, that mindset of hope in us. Going back to Eric Butterworth and the book Living in the Flow, he talks about how, the phrase, my cup runneth over, is such an optimistic feel, right? And he said, and that's great, and we keep that view, but you have to make sure you're holding your cup upright. Because if your cup is running over, but you're holding it upside down, you're getting this much in the very bottom of the cup, right? It's just catching in that little tiny saucer at the bottom. You want to approach it properly so you can actually get the full benefit of all of that is flowing to you. So yes, the flow is there, but if we are not set to receive it in our cup, as opposed to just the tiny base of the cup, it's not working for us. He also tells the story of the jazz musician Dave Brubeck. Who knows Dave Brubeck? Okay. Oh, excellent. So these are the people that when everybody else is doing Star Wars Day on May 4th, right? May the 4th, and the memes come up and say, "This isn't Star Wars Day. It's Dave Brubeck Day," because 5-4 would be a jazz time signature. Means nothing to many of you, but that's okay. I always laugh whenever I see that. Anyway, he was talking about a story with Dave Brubeck, who would go touring, go into concert halls and just start playing, it's jazz. He was improvising. Every performance, everything, every time was something new, something original, every time. And apparently there was a moment when he was driving with some of his musician friends in the vehicle with him, driving through a snowstorm heading out west, and he started pondering, what if the well runs dry? What if I go to sit down at the keyboard and there's no creativity left to come out? And he started panicking. But as I said, this was during a snowstorm. So he was watching the snow hit, and he was looking at the snowflakes and the individual flakes, and each one unique. And he's like, oh, if the universe can do that for snowflakes, I'm fine. There's always something new and something unique that can come out of me. And that set his heart at ease. And it's funny that we so often view nature as something outside of us, which is why it's so wonderful to return to nature and walk through the woods. We think of, say, salmon. Ooh, they've spawned, they swim out to large waters, and then somehow, miraculously, they know how to swim upstream to go back to where they spawned. How do they know that? You know, nature, universe, God is great. Birds, they fly. They know when, they know where, they know what formation to be in. How do they do that? We see that. We can acknowledge the beauty of that, and then we look at ourselves and go, oh, I don't have anything like that. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We stop listening to that wisdom from inside. We stop listening to that divine calling. We stop listening to the Christ consciousness because we think it's beyond us. Oh, that's all nature, and that's all these other things in the universe. You are the universe. You are. You're just showing up as this embodiment. The more that we try to analyze, again, for like half the room raised their hands for being the analytic type. Thank you. But the more that we analyze, the more we study, the more we're going to get to the bottom of this intellectually, the more we end up spinning our wheels. None of us gets to God by studying God. You get to God through your experience of God. Knowledge is great. I love studying. I love learning. I love language. I love all those things. But again, intellectualization will keep me safe. Letting God in, finding God here, that's where it starts getting exciting and scary. That's the experience we're going for. There's a light, there is a guidance in you, just like there is in those birds flying, just like in the salmon swimming. And you have to allow that voice, that light, to reform you from within. A Course in Miracles, I'd mentioned that Ken Daigle studied that. Course in Miracles, lesson 61, there we go, perfect. I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I'm here. I want us to all say that together. I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I'm here. Now, I did not hear the feeling behind that. I heard recitation, which is lovely. I don't care if you're in unison. I want you to feel this, right? Embrace it. Radiate it. So say it like you mean it, whether in unison or not. I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I'm here. Much better. Can you take that with you today? Because even when we come from this vantage point, right, we're letting the light through, it doesn't mean that it's all done for us. We still have to step up and do our own thing. Because nothing is ever done for you. It's only done through you. There was a Buddhist friend, a dear Buddhist friend, who had shared a much longer post. I'm just going to hit on a tiny point from it. They said it was a discussion of how disconnected we've become from our bodies and from our feelings and from divine inspiration, from that light. And they said, we want to analyze, we want to know the data. And at some point, the soul stops asking, can this be proven? And instead, the soul begins asking, have you lived it? And that is a very different question. So I may not be able to prove it to you, but I have lived this experience. Speaking of just such a thing, I'm going to go back to Vinnie Tolman. I mentioned him at the very beginning. His book, The Light After Death. I had watched an interview with him And again, I'm only going to touch on a tiny portion of it, but he, to give you a brief history into his world, at age 25, he died. Died in a bathroom at a Dairy Queen. I won't go into all the details because it would just take too much time, but he was dead for roughly an hour, maybe longer. Now, we all know brain damage starts in much sooner than that, 20 minutes or whatever. Eventually, and again, it's a long story to get into all the details, but one person made the choice to try to start his heart again, and it started. And he was in a coma for 3 days. Now, during that time, he was watching outside of his body until they finally got his body to the hospital, and then he went elsewhere with a spirit guide for 3 days and learned all kinds of things. And then he finally came back and woke up and is a normal person, no brain damage, just a vast experience that has been put into a book. But he talks about how we view our lives here as this is my whole thing. He said, your life, imagine Voyager out in space, wherever it is now. Imagine tying a string to that, bringing it all the way back, okay? Imagine the length of that string. Now drop a grain of sand on that string. The sand is your life. The string is you, and it actually goes farther beyond, right? That's what we're experiencing, but this is you. That continuousness is you. He referred to this as Earth School, where we come to learn the lessons of the Spirit. He gave 10 lessons. I'm only going to mention the first 4 here because they're the most relevant to this particular talk. Number 1 is authenticity. You are here to be you. Don't try to be somebody else. There's a reason why you showed up as you are. Number 2 is understanding the purpose of life, that we are here to learn the spiritual lessons. This is Earth School, right? Think of it like a playground. We get to learn how to love and how to heal and all of those things. Number 3, this one should sound familiar. Love everyone. Everyone. Number 4, and this is where I'll stop out of the 10. Listen to your inner voice. The inner wisdom, the inner light.